a good Camp Tuesday morning. Birds Nation, your Birds boys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald, a.k.a. Mac and Mac, hanging with you. Johnny Mac's going to stay for about a half an hour, then he's got to run over to South Philadelphia for Eagles before practice session with Brian Johnson, the new offensive coordinator, and then an entire Eagle practice. John McMullen was glad to be here with me yesterday. That means he didn't need to go down and cover the massive run on Eagle Kelly green jerseys at the team store.
We're starting right away, huh? Yeah.
Can't we get over the results, this? Johnny Mac? Yeah. The results are in.
I saw the Taylor Swift.
Can't get enough of these jerseys.
Yeah. Hey, look, if you want your pocket picked, enjoy it. I always say, like what you like. I don't care. I think people don't understand my thought process here. In fact, I'm surprised the NFL, I say it to you, Jody, all the time, hasn't gone the Oregon route and just makes it the Wild Wild West. And, hey, have a uniform for Thursday night and Sunday afternoon and Sunday night and do it all. And if you want to buy it, have fun. Knock yourself out. It's more of a shot against our industry, Jody. I'm like, I call this the show for the smart fans. Like, all right, they got Kelly green jerseys. I told you when they're going to be wearing them, and that's that. And now we got training camp going on. It's like off season. All right, maybe there's some things, but I don't know. There's football going on, and if the Eagles lose and the Kelly green jerseys, guess what? People are going to be upset. And that, to me, is the bigger part of it. So I'm like, if you like it, like it. But, all right, let's turn the page. Can we please turn the page? No, and I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the people.
I'm not a really superstitious guy. I won't say there aren't certain things that I believe there's a little karma attached to, but I'm not an overly superstitious guy. Yeah, if the Eagles lose in the Kelly green uniform, I'm not going to go nuts. Anybody who does, come on, you really think?
No, I meant if they lose,
blocking and I meant anything else.
No, I don't. I didn't mean it from a superstitious fashion. I'm not superstitious at all. I mean it from if they lose in anything, the fans are going to be pissed off. If they win in anything, the fans are going to be happy. That's my larger point. So the uniforms don't matter. But if you like them, buy them and knock yourself out. I mean, that's hey, like what you like is what I always say.
And I will cut the fans this much slack. The Eagles are well behind us. There's media.
Oh yeah, they're all
out there. They're selling it pretty darn good and getting all their star players to wear it and pose in it and do videos in it and the like. So this isn't just Jody McDonald or any other.
Well, they're making money, Jody.
Hyping it. The Philadelphia Eagles are the ones who are hyping it.
They're making money. It's a marketing thing. It's a Don Smolensky thing. And that's his job, to make money. But it's not my job to help him make money. Now there's different, obviously TV stations are a little bit different and they're going to get video and they're going to play it up and it's more of an entertainment landscape, but yeah, it's not my job to help. They got enough money. I don't have to help them line their pockets any further.
Here's what I consider my job. My job is to relate to Eagle Nation. And if they care that much about it, then it's worth talking about. Am I here is Jeff Lurie going to give me the smallest little cut? No, absolutely not. Not going to make any money for me. So I don't care about the money making end of it. I care about the fact that Eagle fans care about it. And they came out and proved it yesterday and showed that they care about it by jettisoning, moving Jalen Hurts in midnight green, taking over the #1 spot in Eagle jersey sales in the NFL, replacing Jalen Green in midnight green. He went in Kelly green from #1 to being the #1 jersey seller. They changed the color, didn't change his spot as the #1 selling jersey in the NFL. It just widened the gap between he and #2. Yeah, that's something that's worth talking about, even if you're right that the actual uniform they wear is going to have nothing to do with the outcome of games.
Nothing to do. Well, I'm a traditionalist, so There's a lot of fans who complain about sports talk radio or clickbait reporters or things like that. Well, you know, if you take the clickbaits, they're going to keep doing the clickbait. So from my perspective as a reporter, you know, if an editor tells me to do a Kelly Green story, I'm going to look at him like he's a freaking you know what. You know, let somebody else, let an aggregator handle that. They can do that, and we can get down. If you don't, so for the people that do complain about sports talk radio or about reporters, if you don't let us elevate the conversation ain't getting elevated. That's, you know, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you click on the Eagles are wearing Kelly Green 10 times, and by the way, they do, Jody, 10 times more than what's going on at training camp, that's what you're going to get. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
But, and this has hurt me in my career, I don't have to play into it. You know, I'm trying to elevate the conversation. I don't have to play into it. All I say is, I don't care about jerseys. I don't care about numbers. It's meaningless. But people are welcome to their opinion. They can love it. That's up to them. But, you know, they're not going to care once the game starts. And if they lose in the Kelly Green, they're going to be pissed off. It's not going to make it better. It's not going to make it better. So it's like if you see a pretty girl, everybody's got different tastes. I like this jersey. I like that jersey. Like what you like. That's fine. But I don't like when people like me are asked to do stories about Kelly Green, about marketing stories about Kelly Green uniforms. That's my pet peeve.
Fine. Mine is, again, sometimes you need to be a leader and sometimes you need to be a follower. And when the Eagle fans make as big a statement as they did yesterday on how much they want the Kelly Green, they need to pick Kelly Green, they're willing to shell out for the Kelly Green, then I think you have to acknowledge it. It's going to go by the wayside. It's going to become a non-story here in 24 hours. A 24-hour news cycle is a big deal for 24 hours. And then we get back to how much distance is Cam Jurgens put between himself and Steen for the right guard.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about that.
Well,
it's already been more than 24 hours. The Eagles have done a tremendous job with this. They've done a tremendous marketing job. But guess what? If they changed their uniforms to something else, it would have been the same thing.
Yeah,
people would want the new things.
Yeah,
it would have been
not even close.
It would have been the same thing because they like the team, they like the organization, you know, and they're going to buy and they're going to support the merchandise. That's why I said when Washington changed their name. Now, if they had a better owner, I was saying they were double dipping from a marketing standpoint. Now, it didn't matter because they're so hated. Daniel Snyder was so hated. You know, nobody wanted. But if Josh Harris wants to change it again, he's going to get a tidal wave of merchandising money wherever he goes, because now they're excited, they're hyped up, and all of that kind of stuff. As far as the Eagles specifically, hey, congratulations. They made a lot of money.
When the Eagles debuted the black jersey, it didn't come close to matching up what the Kelly Green has done here in the last couple of days. Not even in the same ballpark. They made a nice couple extra bucks because they were able to sell new uniforms. Right. Give them anything new, somebody's got to bite because there are people out there that have to have the newest thing. Black as compared to Kelly Green, it's not the same thing. Kelly Green is history. Kelly Green was here forever. There is just an allure to it that other uniforms couldn't possibly bring.
Well, then the bigger story there is Jeffrey Lurie changing it to begin with. And
Jeffrey
Lurie made that decision.
Were you covering the Eagles in 1994?
No,
I was.
I know he made the
and that
decision.
was a big story. That was a big deal. And I'll be honest with you, Jeff Lurie wasn't the most popular guy in town at the time.
No, I know he wasn't.
It was just him making the decision. Well, I don't like Kelly Green, so let me flush 50 years of Eagle history here. And they
Well,
eventually got used to it, and it became
that's what I
fine.
was
But
saying.
Jeff
If
Lurie
you
has been looking to correct that wrong for a very long period of time.
But that kind of proves my point. Yeah, I mean, people don't like change to begin with, and I'm more a traditionalist. I would have never changed the uniform to begin with. But you know, if you went to an Eagles game over the past, you know, since 2016, since I've been here, and I've been to every single one, and really 2015, I've been to every single one since that year. There's 65, 70,000 people at the Eagles game. If 35,000 are wearing jerseys, at least 32, 33 are wearing the current jerseys, not the Kelly Green jerseys. You would see the throwback Reggie Whites and the throwback Jerome Browns here and there. But the vast majority of the fans were wearing the current jerseys. Understandably so. That's how it works. They're going to wear what's current. So if they go back to the Kelly Green and make it their permanent, it'll be the opposite. They like the team, whether they recognize it or not. Whatever they're going to wear, they're going to support, especially in this city. But you know, nostalgia, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, Cam Jurgens, the fact that Nick Sirianni again, you know, kind of went out of his way to say it's not his job. To me, that's a far bigger deal than Kelly Green. And I know I'm losing this battle. I put it on Twitter, Jody. I know to the vast majority of people, that is not the case. The vast majority. But that's how you get into the spots. That's how you have self-fulfilling prophecies. If that's what you want, that's what you're going to get.
No,
and that's a
true.
shame.
Not always true, John, because people wanted the return of Kelly Green 10 years ago, 15 years. You don't always get who you want. Sometimes you have to adhere to rules, and change takes time. And
no,
in
I'm
this
not
case,
talking the
change
Eagles.
back.
I'm not talking the Eagles going back to it. I'm saying if that's the kind of stories, if that's the kind of coverage Eagles fans like and want, that's what they're going to get. That's what I'm saying. That's my pet peeve.
And mine is, it's a 1 day, 2 day max story, and then we can get back to talking football. So the little diversion off the main road for a couple days.
It's already been more than 1 day, Jody.
John, how many times did we mention Kelly Green yesterday?
Quite a bit with Kerr. We were joking about it on Twitter.
Oh, that's right. Kerr went
uniform
there.
Guy.
That's right, because Kerr went, because you know Kerr's a big uniform guy, so you went there. I wouldn't have brought up Kelly Green yesterday. I wanted to wait to see what the actual response was when they made him available, and what it was the Eagle fans couldn't get enough of it. So we'll see a whole bunch of Kelly Green jerseys when they get down there. Will they be seeing Cam Jurgens as their starting right guard? Nick Sirianni won't call it a competition over yet, but Jurgens has started all 3 days so far, and Steen has had some issues. He's a rookie. He's playing a new position. I guess it should have been expected, but he's had a bunch of pre-snap penalties and the like. Is this competition already over?
Well, I don't think it's over for the simple fact that Nick is going out of his way to say it isn't over. Like, I mean, there's other competitions going on, or you know, they're probably not competitions. And this seems to be the only one. Running back, but everybody knew was going to be sort of a committee approach in training camp, and then we'll see how they whittle it down. But even that is, you kind of see it shifting towards DeAndre Swift. You know, Cam's taken all the first team reps. Tyler Steen hasn't gotten one first team rep. Now, the pads haven't come on, and they can today, and we'll see if the Eagles put them on, but they're permitted to. And Nick kept saying, you know, basically the pads, you said it's early, the pads aren't on. And this is the third time, if you go back to the off season, when people would ask him about Cam, and he wouldn't sort of give him the job, which I have no problem with that. You shouldn't just anoint somebody. But you know what? They anointed Nakobe Dean. And if you think about their perspective, now it's different position. Nakobe's a natural linebacker. There's no question. Like, he's the starting middle linebacker. He's the green dot. everybody in the organization is lined up behind Nakobe Dean. Now, if you think about that, Jody, what is the difference between Nakobe Dean and Cam Jurgens? Well, there's one obvious one. He's changing positions, so that's more difficult, Cam Jurgens. But Cam was the second round pick, and Nakobe was the third round pick.
Right.
And they're not lining up behind Cam Jurgens and saying, this is our guy, this is our guy, this is our guy. And then if he falls on his face, you can make a decision. You can make a pivot at that point. I'm a little bit surprised by the way they've handled it. Excuse me. To be honest, I'm a little bit surprised.
The only other difference is, and I don't know if it was planned as it was, or if that was just the way the draft board fell and they made the pick that they made. They turned around and drafted a potential competitor for that position in the same exact round that they took Jurgens a year before, second. What other moves did the Eagles make for a linebacker to give Nakobe Dean competition at middle linebacker?
Well, there is competition, but Tyler's a third round pick. He's not a second round pick.
Excuse me, sorry.
Cam's, Cam was 51st overall. Tyler was the third round pick. Now we're only 65, so it's not a huge disparity. But there's, how that goes, second and third round versus third round tags. You're right. There isn't competition. Maybe if there were,
Eagles use a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, or a seventh round pick to draft a linebacker to give Nakobe a little competition. No. Did they sign any free agents during this off season to come in and give Nakobe a competition? No. So it's kind of by default that Kobe had to be handed the linebacker thing, or that they just felt so confident that we don't need to have competition.
That's what I was going to say.
He's going to be that good. Here's the middle linebacker position, Kobe. We don't even fear bringing in someone else behind you. They're in two different positions at those two different positions.
Is it? That's what I was going to say. Is it defaulting to him, or is it purposefully defaulting to him? I think they're purposefully defaulting to him. They are not purposefully defaulting to Cam Jurgens. Again, the most obvious answer is it's because he's changing positions, and he's not a natural guard, and he was brought in to play center. So that's the most obvious scenario. Plus, they have this history of having big-bodied guys next to Jason Kelce to sort of make up for his undersized aspect of his game. And Cam doesn't offer that. It's sort of undersized. So there's a couple little tweaks, but I do think it's pretty obvious he's going to be the starting right guard unless he completely falls apart. And because it's pretty obvious, I'm curious as to why they seem to be hesitant to, in other words, I would go about it and say, like with Isaac, people forget when Isaac was a younger player, they defaulted to him at left guard. They wanted him to be the left guard in the 2017 season. He started the season as the starter, and he didn't play well, and he got benched for Stefan Wisniewski. I would have gone about it that way and say, all right, he's the guy. He's the one getting all the first team reps. Now, eventually, if he shows up in week 1 and week 2 and he struggles, maybe you have to rethink it. But I'm just kind of surprised that they've singled out him as sort of the guy. And this goes beyond Nakobe was just the first example, but any other position where it's, whether it's Reed Blankenship or somebody of that nature. Cam Jurgens, who's a pretty high level pick, is the one who's getting you got to prove it to us treatment, which it's a little bit weird.
But
I don't know why.
Which is more important, actions or words? Nick Sirianni hasn't come out and said yet, yeah, Cam Jurgens is the leader in the clubhouse. Cam would have to lose the job. He hasn't verbally gotten there, but how many reps has Steen gotten with the first team so far in the first 3 practices?
0. Now, it's going to be interesting today if they do have the pads on, because maybe, maybe they'll want to look at them with the pads on. Maybe they'll want to look at what that size offers them versus Cam Jurgens. So maybe they'll mix them in. But there's been no evidence of that coming yet. But when they have these off days, and they didn't have an off day, they had a walkthrough yesterday, but when they have these slowed down days, that's usually when they're thinking about elevating guys and giving them more reps, whether it's 3 to 2 or 2 to 1. It generally happens after either an off day or a walkthrough day where they sit and look at, could be Sidney Brown, for instance, who's been strictly on third team. At some point, they're gonna give him reps with the 2s and hopefully eventually the 1s. And that usually comes after one of those days that we had on Monday. What day? I get mixed up with days. Or Tuesday. Yeah. So they had a walkthrough yesterday, and you might see some changes when it comes to reps.
And oh, by the way, as John has reminded us a couple times, today the first day that they're even allowed to go into pads. Not mandated to go into pads. They're allowed to go into pads. So we won't know until Johnny gets down there and finds out if they do or don't decide to go with pads, and they could handle themselves a little bit differently. One other thing I wanted to get in, John, before we know you got to run. Again, 3 practices, no pads, just running drills is what they've done so far, but they did it for an hour and a half, which is like, oh my God, the Eagles went an hour and a half on Sunday. That's
green. That's a green practice, Jay.
Yeah, they went bright green. They went Kelly green yesterday. Yeah. As a matter of fact, tight end competition, and we know it's not. We're not talking about number 1. That would be Dallas Goedert. Jack Stoll was the backup tight end all year last year. We know his strengths are more blocking than receiving, but he played more snaps than any other tight end not named Goddard on the Eagles last year. And they've got 3 guys who are probably battling for, at best, 1 spot on the 53-man roster. Now, they could carry at least 1, if not potentially 2 tight ends on the practice squad. Again, early going, only 3 practices. How would you say the depth chart of tight ends stacks up for the Eagles right now?
I think, it's pretty clear 1-2 with Dallas and Jack Stoll. And then it becomes, all right, who's going to break through and be that third guy? And, who knows? Maybe Dan Arnold's presence, they even consider keeping 4 if they want to use more of a 12 structure in some of these empty sets. But
you don't really see that happening.
Well, they're not bowling over people. Quez Watkins had a good practice, but I don't think a ton of people have confidence in Quez. We'll see. Consistency is going to be a big thing with him. Olamide Zaccheaus had a good day in the second practice, but it's kind of been nondescript other than that. So it's not like they're wowing people with the third receiver. I've said from the start, Dan's a really good receiver. And they're a Super Bowl team or Super Bowl contending team, significant Super Bowl contender. I think everybody would agree with that. And that's the kind of guy you want to keep. Now, if they were a rebuilding team or a mediocre team, I'd say, no, can't keep Dan Arnold. You gotta go with the upside, the ceiling of Grant Calcaterra. Who knows? Tyree Jackson, if he continues to stay healthy, I'd say you got to go upside. For this particular team, I'm trying to find a way to keep Dan Arnold. And if that means they're not great after AJ and Devontae at receiver. So I'm not really concerned about.
Then let me ask you, if they're going to keep 4 tight ends, the potential to keep 4 tight ends, how many wide receivers they going to keep? Because you're right. I understand the tie between receivers and tight ends. They're receivers, wide receiver, call them what you want. But then there's the big picture. Because if you're going to keep an extra receiver, that means you're going to keep one less offensive lineman or one less defensive lineman. You can tie certain positions together, but at the end of the day, it still comes down to getting under that number for the overall roster. If you add to a specific position, you must subtract from another position. Are you suggesting if they keep 4 tight ends, they're only going to keep 4 receivers?
No, not necessarily. And first of all, let me say real quick, I don't think they're going to keep 4 tight ends. But if they say to themselves, all right, look, Grant's not ready, but we don't want to lose him. We're concerned losing him on waivers. You might try to play some games with the initial 53, try to keep him. If you like him better than one of those down roster receivers. So to me, it's really about Calcaterra. Like, I'm keeping Arnold. It's really about Calcaterra. Do you want him on the roster? Do you not care? You can probably get him back on the practice squad, but maybe the Eagles think differently. But there's a couple spots. It's not just receiver. It's also offensive line. They're not as deep. They typically carry a lot of offensive linemen because they're usually really, really deep, and they're not quite as deep on the offensive line. And some of those backups, you're like, you got to keep Driscoll. You got to keep Dennis Kelly. You got to keep Brett Toth, most likely. You really have to keep Suo Pettit. They already cut him twice and got him back to the practice squad.
He's not a lock. I can do that.
There's a lot of manipulating the Trevor Reeds of the world, the undrafted kids. Usually the Eagles like to keep one of them to give to Stoutland. You can probably get them through waivers and get them on the practice squad. So there's a lot of ways you can do it. It's not just tight end versus wide receiver. And a lot of it, and it all hinges to me on Calcaterra, as I said. I don't know where the Eagles are with him, but I know Dan Arnold's a better receiver. And for a Super Bowl team, if he can make a big catch in the divisional round or the NFC Championship game, and you can get him matched up, I need a player like that when I'm a contender, and maybe I don't need a player like that when I'm not a contender.
Yeah, you're leaning toward Arnold. I'm leaning toward Calcaterra, and you gave your reasoning as to why, how the Eagles should be looking at it, where the team is in their position for overall. Here's what I make the decision on. How many snaps is either one of them going to get? If Dallas Goedert is going to be on the field 95% of the time, and you're going to be a 2 tight end some, but when Goddard's off, it's going to be Stoll on there. It's probably going to running play. What's the percentage of snaps your third tight end's going to play anyway? If it's under 10%, then I say, give me the guy with upside. I know that it's all chips are in the middle of the table to win the Super Bowl this year. But if we're talking about a player who's playing less than 10% of the snaps to begin with, I got to keep the guy who's younger and got.
Well, I would think I would if Arnold's here, he's playing more than 10% of the snaps. So that's number one, and those snaps will be more impactful than Calcaterra snaps, which is kind of my point. Now, long term, yeah, maybe Calcaterra turns into something. But when Dallas went down last year for 5 games, then it becomes pretty significant. Right. And they persevered without Dallas Goedert, but they played differently. Jack Stoll and Graham Calcaterra weren't catching a lot of balls. They had to play differently. And I'm not comparing Dan Arnold to Dallas Goedert. They'd still have to play differently, but they wouldn't have sort of a non-threat at tight end with a receiver. Now, the hope is Dallas is out there for 17 games and really 20 games if you go back to the Super Bowl. But, I mean, that's the kind of guy. And if you, that to me is definition of Super Bowl contending team versus, if you're a 5-win team, I'm keeping Calcaterra. If you're a 7 mediocre, 8-9, I'm keeping Calcaterra. If I'm a contender, Dan Arnold's going to make a big catch for me. I know it in a big spot. That's how I would think of it.
Yeah, we'll see. And if Goddard gets hurt between now and cut down, oh, I think you're right, John. It's going to be Arnold because he's closer to being Goddard than either the other two tight ends that the Eagles have on their roster right now. But if Goddard's looking fine, he's physically fine, he's here for 17 games, I think it changes the math and changes the equation. All right, JM, safe travels over to South Philly. You and me tomorrow, brother, okay?
All right. Thanks, Jody. Appreciate it. Thanks, Mark.
John McMullen off to Eagles training camp. And the mark he's thanking would be our buddy, Mark Farzetta, who I think I'm a hardworking guy. Farzetta is almost as hardworking as I am. He wasn't on until 2 o'clock in the morning like I was last night after the Phillies game on WIP, but he did the Phillies postgame show here on the JAKIB YouTube channel. He was up for the Farzy show this morning, and he's jumping on with us. Farzetta in for McMullen next here on Birds 365.